Good morning, everybody. We'll give it one more minute for people to join. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Lauren Schelberg, and welcome to our Nevada Rapid DNA webinar hosted by GTH DNA and our Rapid DNA learning platform, GoRapidDNA. We are very excited about our webinar program today. We have 6 distinguished speakers that will be covering the advancements of rapid DNA in the United States and specifically here in Nevada. The format for today's webinar is that we will hear from our 6 speakers whose presentations last approximately 10 to 15 minutes each. We will then have about 15 minutes to address questions from the audience before the webinar ends at 11:30. And you can submit a question at any time during the webinar. We will do our best to address your questions. And if we don't have time to address your question during the webinar, we will work with the speakers panel to follow up with your question later this week. And to submit a question, please post it in the chat box, or you could also post it in the Q&A box, and your question will then be sent directly to the panel. It will not be visible to other attendees. And for those of you that are authorized to receive continuing education credits for today's event, GTH DNA will be offering attendance certificates. So please send me an email if you would like to request a certificate. I will leave my email in the chat box. Please enjoy today's event. We will now hear from Chief Chris Crawforth. Chief Crawforth has been with the Sparks Police Department since 2004, where he has served in various roles, including Field Training Officer, Detective, Sergeant, Professional Standards Lieutenant, Detective Lieutenant, Deputy Chief, and since 2020, Chief of Police. Chief Crawforth will be sharing opening remarks. Over to you, Chief.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm excited to be providing the opening remarks for today's Rapid DNA webinar. I'd like to thank all our speakers and the attendees that are taking time to participate in today's events. Some people might ask where Sparks is, so I'll hit that real quick. It's right next to Reno, and we're nowhere near Las Vegas. For those that are not in Nevada, we're 400 miles away. So there's a lot of excitement about the future of rapid DNA in Nevada. I believe you'll find today's agenda extremely helpful for law enforcement agencies and crime labs that are considering moving forward with rapid DNA programs. Since the 1990s, DNA has allowed our crime labs to assist law enforcement with solving crimes that otherwise were unsolvable. DNA has transformed how we identify and prosecute criminals. Speaking for the Sparks Police Department's, and I'm sure for all law enforcement agencies throughout the state, we are grateful for the hard work of Nevada that has led us through the DNA journey for the last 30 years, specifically our crime lab here in Washoe County. Both law enforcement and the crime lab are now facing challenges as we move to the next chapter in DNA advancement. Forensic DNA is so good at solving crime, the crime labs are overwhelmed with requests for DNA testing. Law enforcement sees rapid DNA as the answer to give the crime lab some relief on cases that would be appropriate for rapid DNA testing, especially our property crimes. Police officers are excited at the prospect of getting immediate answers with certain DNA cases rather than waiting to go through the traditional process. Great success stories are being shared throughout the country when law enforcement has access to rapid DNA. These success stories are even occurring when states don't have access to search criminal offender DNA databases. But we know we can't maximize the power of rapid DNA until law enforcement is able to submit criminal DNA evidence tested on rapid DNA to the state and national CODIS database of criminal offenders. I'm excited that the FBI is joining us to explain their plan to allow crime scene evidence tested on rapid to be entered into CODIS. And I'm proud that the Washoe County Crime Lab is preparing for a regional program that will work to implement the FBI program to allow evidence tested on rapid to be compared to CODIS offender profiles. You'll be hearing later from Lisa Smith-Rome from the Washoe County Sheriff's Forensic Science Division, who will give you more details on this exciting development. They have spent a lot of time to identify places that will make it very simple for all of the different agencies that are contributing to the forensics division. I'm hopeful that the work of Washoe County will pave the way for the other crime labs to also develop rapid evidence programs to search CODIS, and the entire state of Nevada will have access to CODIS through rapid DNA in the future. The Washoe County Crime Lab has identified a location at the Regional Training Center to provide access to many, if not all, those that are currently being serviced by the Washoe County Crime Lab, and I appreciate their forward-looking approach. Even though coded searching is not yet available, I would like to encourage local law enforcement to start learning and planning for rapid DNA before coded searching is available. Today, you will hear about many applications of rapid DNA outside of searching codes that can help you solve crime now. I wish all of the law enforcement agencies in Nevada the best of luck as they prepare for rapid DNA. I encourage you to consult with your crime lab every step of the way as you consider rapid DNA programs. Thank you for your time, and please enjoy today's webinar. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Chief Crawforth. Our first presenter is Lisa Hurst. Lisa is the Director of North America for GTH DNA, where she has worked for over 25 years on forensic DNA public policy and legislation. Lisa will give us an overview of rapid DNA, a legal review, and federal funding opportunities related specifically to Nevada. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lauren. Okay, so to give you a kind of a quick overview, just to make sure everyone's on the same page with regards to rapid. So what is rapid DNA? Really the biggest thing that everyone's excited about is that rapid DNA can process samples in 90 minutes. It was intentionally developed for operation outside of the crime laboratory. It's a very relatively simple to use instrument. It does not require a trained DNA analyst to operate the instrument. It's self-contained. You'll see in some later presentations, it's about the size of maybe a microwave if you stood it on its side. It's desktop sized. But really the big deal about rapid DNA is that, again, it's this 90 minutes. You can get an investigative lead within hours rather than waiting at the very least weeks, very likely months and longer for crime laboratory analysis. It's not just timely identification of your suspects, but importantly, it's timely exoneration of potential suspects as well. So it also brings with it an opportunity to potentially reduce some of the less favorable interactions with your communities who might feel biased, investigations, things like this. If you're able to quickly, efficiently narrow in on a suspect, on the right suspect, that also necessarily means you're not having to question additional suspects while you're waiting for that DNA analysis to get completed. A few knots of rapid. Rapid is not intended to be a replacement for traditional lab-based DNA analysis. For one reason is rapid is not really great, at least not in these current iterations of the technology, for complex casework. Things like mixtures, really old, really degraded samples, very, very small, minute pieces of DNA, that touch DNA, not great for rapid. You still want to use a crime laboratory, especially for those types of samples. Rapid being better really for your single source, something, not always, but typically something that you can see with the naked eye. Rapid also has not yet been challenged for admissibility in court. Eventually, we do expect this will happen. And I would say that rapid has been used in court. It has been introduced in court. The defense did not challenge the use of rapid, and that was largely because it was a murder case. There was a lot of other DNA evidence. Rapid was used to get that quick presumptive lead on an identification, but the rest of the DNA went through the crime laboratory. And in fact, there's some national scientific working groups led by the FBI, which have come out with some recommendations for using an A swab and a B swab. And really this use of the A swab, B swab method is what has really mitigated some of the need for admissibility issues. So the idea with rapid, the recommendation is that you use it again on single source crime scene stains where there's enough DNA to get an A swab and a B swab. So 2 swabs. The A swab, the best swab, always goes straight into your chain of custody. And if not directly to the crime lab, then at least into evidence to determine later if you want the crime lab to test it. The B swab, that's your second swab. That's the swab that you can use in RAPID then for your presumptive lead. If that swab winds up giving you a lead on a suspect, then you can ask the crime laboratory to get that A swab done as well. And then that's the one, that A swab is what you would use in court. So one for the RAPID instrument, one for traditional DNA analysis. Overall, and I think you'll hear this repeated over throughout these presentations today, the best law enforcement RAPID DNA programs are those that use and are developed in coordination with an accredited crime laboratory. Ideally, the crime laboratory would be your local or state crime laboratory that you're already using for DNA. If that lab is not ready to provide that, what we call scientific reach back support, and you'll hear a little bit more about this later. If your lab is not ready to provide that kind of support for the local law enforcement agencies in your state, then there are also accredited crime laboratories that are private crime laboratories. Very good laboratories, of course. They are fee for service, so it'll cost a little bit more, but definitely work with an accredited crime laboratory. So there's 2 use cases for RAPID DNA. The first one I'm just going to talk about really briefly, primarily because Nevada's state law is not very conducive to using RAPID DNA in the booking station, which was sort of the first program that the FBI set up for RAPID. So in order to use RAPID with this booking station enrollment, you need to be an arrestee state. Now, we do kind of categorize Nevada as an arrestee state. And I'll get into a second why why for the purpose of RAPID, it doesn't meet the right standards yet. Your law does not meet the right standards yet. But RAPID at booking stations, a lot of great benefits to using this with enrollment. Of course, already you're required to collect that DNA sample from persons who get arrested. And then you send that sample off to the crime lab, wait for it to be tested. And when that testing eventually happens and then CODIS is checked, then you get a notification that there may have been a match on the database to some other additional crime. By that time in most states, that offender has already been released. So being able in 90 minutes to get that identification match in CODIS prevents dangerous criminals from being released with law enforcement having, no idea the wiser. It closes loopholes on missed samples. This is a big problem in every single state. Samples that are required to be collected for a variety of different reasons don't get collected. Including RAPID, tying it into that fingerprint booking system, which is part of the FBI's requirement, closes down that loophole on just forgetting or missing or whatever reason those samples are missed. And then it also, of course, avoids dangerous situations for law enforcement. When you do release an offender who later matches on the database, that person knows what he's done. And when your deputies have to go back out now with a new arrest warrant and approach this person, it could lead to a dangerous situation for those officers. So again, while they're still in jail, getting that identification, very valuable. Louisiana was the first state to implement this. They have about 6 booking station sites that are either up and running. I think maybe 2 of the 6 are in process. Florida this year has been in the last 2 years has been in the process of rolling out about 10 sites statewide to get that system running. And we do have other states in development, Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, Ohio, and the FBI are all working on booking station enrollment systems. Now, I mentioned Nevada's, you're not quite eligible for this yet, mostly because the Nevada law requires, a DNA upon arrest to be collected, that you're not allowed to test it unless that arrest was made on a warrant or until after a finding of probable cause has happened. That, especially that finding of the probable cause, takes the analysis of the DNA sample that was collected out of the booking enrollment process. Doug with the FBI will talk a little bit, I think, more about this later, but the Nevada law would have to be changed to allow for immediate analysis before the probable cause finding. Also, you have to be kind of legally allowed to do it at the booking station. This is less of a hurdle, but also Nevada law says that the sample must be submitted to the appropriate forensic laboratory for testing. So there's ways around that potentially. Is a rapid DNA instrument part of a forensic laboratory? You may be able to find some definitions within regulation to fix that. And then lastly, even after you've got your law in place, the IT infrastructure, not a small obstacle. That takes some money and some time to get that set up. So it's something you could look at downstream if you're interested in getting a group together to change your laws in Nevada. But Louisiana, again, was the first. They had some great hits right off the bat, everything from across state lines hit with Georgia, homicide, attempted murder of a police officer, just really showing the value of rapid DNA, making these identifications while the offender is still in custody. But what law enforcement really gets excited about is rapid DNA evidence applications. So there's a few different ways to go about this. You can use rapid DNA for just your one-to-one comparisons. And this is the most common use. This is you have a blood stain from a crime scene, and you have a suspect in mind that you can get a DNA sample and you just one-to-one compare it. Again, this is about streamlining, getting inclusions as well as exclusions for your investigations, and really moving DNA more into the front of being a tool for prosecutors. A tool for investigators instead of a tool that has traditionally sometimes been a lot more for prosecutors at the end after you've made an identification, and then the DNA results finally come in and confirm your guy or gal. Local databases, this has also been popular, especially in states where maybe the state system has not been as supportive of using rapid, where the databases are a little bit smaller, where you don't have arrestee DNA programs. You'll hear a little bit later about the Bensalem and Bucks County program that's been going on. But again, this is very similar to one-to-one matching, but now you're going to database those samples. And you could have a situation where you're asking for samples from volunteers, from suspects, if you will, as they come into the system, and holding those samples as well. We do have a number of states that are doing a comparison only to their state. So of course, right now you cannot upload evidence from Rapid to CODIS for searching, but a lot of states have instead made their state database available for searching. And again, not across state lines, but just within the state. We do have a number of states doing this. Arizona, Connecticut, Kentucky, Missouri, and Oklahoma system just came online. Pennsylvania is about to put about 15 instruments throughout their state to do this type of testing as well. But the big gorilla, the big opportunity is CODIS. And again, right now, you cannot search that 23 million sample database. You cannot search it with Rapid, but change is coming. You're going to hear a lot about this coming up. In 2025, the FBI is poised to publish these standards. So consider, again, talking to your crime labs, get ahead of this. Consider working groups, consider not just how you're going to do it, but how you're going to pay for it. I would strongly recommend getting policymakers, legislators involved, because that funding piece is always really important. And your crime labs are really going to need your support and encouragement to go forward, and especially support for more resources as they try to make sure their states are covered. So again, Rapid DNA, this is just a quick overview of where it is around the country. Almost every state has at least some rapid DNA in the state. A lot of states have rapid DNA both within the crime laboratory and outside of the crime laboratory at local law enforcement. So a lot of this is coming online, but it's not necessarily it's not that new, and a lot of states and local agencies are making use of rapid. And I just want to touch very briefly on funding. Federal earmarks, always an opportunity. We've had some great success with earmarks, including in Nevada, some successful applicants as well. Once this CODIS doorway opens, earmarks, as well as most of the other federal grants, will also become an opportunity. So earmarks were really chased after because a lot of the federal grants say that the DNA profile must be searchable in CODIS. And so for evidence right now, that's not an opportunity. But again, beginning next year, when it does become an opportunity, that means that those federal grants will become a source of potential funding. So even if you don't go after a federal earmark, take a look at the Burn JAG grants, in particular, any of the COPS grants. All of those will work in that space. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next presenter is Robert O'Brien from the Global Forensic Justice Center at Florida International University, and Rob will be sharing a technical overview of rapid DNA. And although he couldn't join us live today, we are pleased to share his pre-recorded presentation.
Robert O'Brien from the Global Forensic and Justice Center. We are a preeminent center of FIU, Florida International University. We've been involved in rapid DNA for over 10 years now, with both instruments and even the precursors to the instruments that are currently on the market. So just going over basically some of the things that may have been set up before, talking about rapid DNA. So what is rapid DNA? So rapid DNA is a system that is currently designed to collect and process samples in 90 minutes. You're compressing a standard DNA workflow into easy use and a mobile process. So this is something that can be taken to a scene, whether it is a crime scene, mass disaster situation, or to the border, things like that. Designed to be operated by non-technical users. So that was one of the requirements for rapid DNA. The idea was not to deploy laboratory personnel to run these devices, and they have minimal hands-on time when you're actually running the instrument. It's sample in, the instrument does the work, and then it's answer out. So it's really a three-step process. Your sample is placed into a cartridge, and the cartridge is inserted into the instrument. That, and then entering any information as to the name of the sample, any information, that should be all your hands-on time. Then you let the instrument do its thing. It takes about 90 minutes, at the end of which you're going to get DNA results. Both instruments currently in the market are producing the same confirmatory result that you will get off of the laboratory. So it is directly comparable to any data. And if you do get a match, it is going to be a definitive match. It's not considered presumptive. The two main instruments on the market right now are shown here. You've got on the left, you have the Rapid ID. On the right, you've got the Andy. There are some differences. They both produce all 20 core CODIS loci plus some additional loci. Some produce one does one sample at a time. The other one does multiple samples at a time. So really what best fits your workflow and the needs of your organization. Both systems do have two different types of cartridges. You've got your reference cartridge, which is going to be primarily used for your buccal swabs. So any type of reference sample. They can also be used usually for high blood level samples. So if you do have a blood as a reference, they will work for that. And then both systems have a low level cartridge. This is going to be used also for blood, but more your lower levels of blood. You could use bone, tissue, saliva if you're collecting from soda cans, drinking bottles. Even a single strand of plucked hair can be used, or if you're going to be doing things like looking for wear of the item off of clothing. And if you see some of the diagrams, we have stuff like we've done chewing gums, cigarette butts, all these different things we've processed, and they work great with a rapid DNA device. So like I said before, sampling, if you place a sample in the cartridge, usually it's in the form of a swab, but things like gum and cigarette butts, you can actually place those directly into the cartridge, or even cuttings of cloth, you can place directly into the cartridge. That usually takes about maybe 5 minutes to get done. Once you put on the instrument, it's 90 minutes, and then you're going to have your DNA profile at the end. And like I said, that's going to include the 20 core CODIS loci from the FBI and some additional markers. For the user, that is going to give them some general information, like you're going to get a green check mark. A green check mark will usually mean you have a full DNA profile and no reviews required. So, you know, at the booking stations, they typically need a green check mark for it to go directly up for comparison purposes. A yellow check mark usually means that the sample should be looked at. It needs to be reviewed by typically a DNA analyst or someone with training in data interpretation, so that they can look at the data, because a yellow could be anything from a near perfect profile, which is just missing a marker or two, a profile that has really not many markers at all, maybe just one or two, which probably you won't be able to do anything with, or it can even be a mixture where you have DNA from more than one individual on the profile. All those will get checked yellows. Then the last one, not seen too often, but it can occur, is a red. If you see a red, that usually is not sample dependent. It usually is based on perhaps an instrument issue or maybe a reagent issue, something going on with the cartridge. But typically a red is not sample dependent. So your matching and technical reachback support, this becomes important. So like I said before, green, I've got a full DNA profile. The Rapid software, both systems have where you can actually do matching on the software itself. And of course, there are other databases you can use for matching. But if you get a full DNA profile, you can go ahead and let that be matched. If you have a yellow, you should be reaching back for technical support by a trained DNA analyst. Some small agencies I know are training people in their agency how to at least look at data and make preliminary determinations on a yellow based on whether they think it's going to be uploadable or it's actually going to be a sample they're going to have to rerun, or perhaps sample the item of evidence in a different location. Typically with your reference samples, I would say over 90% of the time you're getting your green check marks. The only time you start to see yellows is when you're doing your evidentiary type samples, your non-reference samples. So rapid DNA sample guide. So if you are going to be running this for non-reference samples, you should be doing a validation, like how you'd validate any piece of DNA equipment as to the type of samples, how low level you're going to test, and the different bodily fluids that you'll be looking at when you're running for DNA. You can do, there's two methods. There's the A swab, B swab method and the bouquet swab method. So the A swab, B swab is A first. That goes to your laboratory for processing. Your B goes onto your instrument for your investigative leads. Or the bouquet method is where you try to attempt to take 2 swabs at a time of the stain. Of course, that's going to be dependent on the size of your stain, if you can actually take 2 swabs at a time. And then one thing, if you're going to be getting a rapid device, you should be looking to the companies to provide you with a field guide so that you can actually show you how to process more difficult samples, whether it's things like bones, cigarette butts, chewing gum, things that you may not be able to just simply swab and place the swab into the instrument. So I would, if you are purchasing a unit or looking into moving it from maybe references to evidentiary type samples, you should probably go speak to whoever's selling you the unit to make sure they're providing you with a guide on how to work other types of samples. And that's the end of my presentation. There's my contact info if you have any questions about rapid DNA or any questions about trainings or validations. Thank you.
All right, our next presenter is Sheriff Fred Herron. Sheriff Heron is currently the sheriff of Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And before being elected sheriff, he was an earlier pioneer of using rapid DNA when he was the police chief of Bensalem Township. Sheriff Heron will discuss the rapid DNA program and how it has benefited his community by expediting criminal investigations. Over to you, Sheriff.
Okay, let me just get this going here. Okay, do you see Lauren, do you see the screen?
Yep, you'll just want to go up to display settings and hit switch presenter.
All right, I did that, so let's switch it back. How about now?
Looks good.
Okay, let me, okay. All right, well, thank you everyone for letting me join you and sharing kind of what we've been doing the last, decade or so here in Bucks County. So just if you don't know, but actually you probably do know because Bucks County has made some national news since last week, but we are on the southeast corner of Pennsylvania. We border the city of Philadelphia. That comes into play in a little bit, but it's a fairly busy county. We're about an hour and 15 minutes from New York City. Again, bordering Philadelphia is at our immediate south, and not far from Trenton, New Jersey, Allentown, Pennsylvania. So it keeps us pretty busy here in Bucks County, and especially where I came from in Bensalem Township. We're shaped like Italy, so it's very long. It's about an hour and 20 minutes north to south, and that comes into play in a few minutes, but very narrow, only about 22 minutes east to west. And the southern part of the county is where Philadelphia is, and if you go to the north part is Allentown, and then over to the right part of the east would be New York City. We have about 39 police departments in the county, with a little over 900 sworn officers in this county as well. So Pennsylvania is a commonwealth, not a state. So every little town has its own police department, which makes it very interesting as far as logistics and as far as getting procedures done and policy done. But in this particular case, when in 2015, when all our police departments got on board with local databasing, we were able to get everybody on the same page. And I think that's what's really made some of our program pretty successful. But today we're really going to be talking about a combination of local databasing and rapid DNA. So here in Pennsylvania, rapid DNA in a booking station is not an option for us. We are not an arrestee state. We are one of 19 or 18 that do not have arrestee legislation, so we're a convicted felon state. So at time of conviction, actually they take the DNA when you're getting closer to your release time. DNA is taken and put into CODIS, but not at time of arrest. But what we did was, we are trying to push through some legislation in Pennsylvania. I'm hoping that eventually it'll pass. We've introduced it twice now. Last time we got pretty far, not far, halfway through, but it died coming out of the Senate, did not get into the House. So that was a problem. But we'll give it another shot next year again, and hopefully we can make some headway on that. So crime scene to suspect is our most beneficial way to use rapid. We do take DNA by voluntary means at time of arrest, and we get about a 94% compliance that people that give us their DNA when they're not obligated by law. But that might be a topic for another day. But what we're doing now really is crime scene to individual. And we have a suspect and we're running DNA through our rapid machine. Casework against state offender database. At this time, the Pennsylvania State Police is in the process of establishing an only outside of CODIS database for the use of rapid. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm fairly confident in the near future this is where they're going to be moving to, which would be really a great help for us. I will say when I started, I did not know anything before 2010 regarding DNA, and I can tell you, I think Doug Harris is on. The FBI has come such a long way, and what great partners to really, be leaders in looking outside the box approach to utilizing DNA. We've come a long way, and I couldn't be more pleased with, them understanding the problems for frontline law enforcement and really working with their local partners to solve this problem and make DNA more accessible to law enforcement across this nation every day. So I think as the future continues, we're going to see some really good advancements with that. So local reference databasing is what we chose to implement, and that's what we've been doing. So just a quick history of how we got involved in utilizing DNA. Obviously, prior to 2010, crime scenes were still processed, but most of the property crime, burglaries, theft from vehicles, things like that, even theft of vehicles, even robberies, our state system was so backed up. They are overwhelmed with work, and government, not like retail, they don't hire more employees when it gets busy. The legislators just make them do, I guess, more with less. And so it's not their fault, but, as crime continues, it's something we need to keep on top of. In 2010, we looked at doing local databasing outside of the CODIS system, and we were very successful in 2015. All 39 departments, as I told you earlier, came on board. And in March of 2017, we became the first local law enforcement agency to utilize Rapid, go live with a Rapid instrument 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year inside the police department, not in the lab. But this is extremely important, and I'm not sure. I didn't see the titles of people that are on the webinar. You have to work with the lab. This is not a police project only. It is a true, by every stretch of the word, true partnership with your lab, local law enforcement and labs together, working together to prevent crime and to prevent the next victim out there. And that is key. And that is really what we all took our jobs, whether you're in law enforcement or you're in the laboratory field, our end goal is the same. So March of 2017, a couple months later, our neighboring county that also neighbors Philadelphia, Montgomery County, came on board, and now we have Chester County on board. So there are 4 counties that surround Philadelphia: Montgomery, Chester, Delaware County, and Bucks County. And we're just waiting for Delaware County now to come on board. And I think that'll happen eventually. 2021, we were just into COVID here, and we were already talking about a regional database with Philadelphia. So Philadelphia has a local database outside of CODIS using a small pond application, and we are searching against Philadelphia crime scene. And I think I have that in the presentation. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. The big thing is this is not a project, a program, an initiative. It's a philosophy. We have all personnel trained in taking DNA from crime scenes and from individuals. And for us in Bensalem, or in Bucks County, I should say, I keep forgetting I left Bensalem, I'm now the sheriff of Bucks County. This is a new way of policing, a new way of philosophy, utilizing DNA as an investigative tool. And our officers and our investigators play the biggest role in collections. They're all trained, and we have about 95% recovery on reported crimes. As I started to say, even though we're outside of Philadelphia, we don't get a lot of whodunit homicides. We don't get a lot of whodunit sexual assaults. Our sexual assaults are normally family members or knowns or date rapes, things of that nature. Our homicides are not street violence homicides. They're not drug deals that went bad. They're not a shooting of a bodega. It is domestic related, employee violence, things of that nature. It's somebody that knew somebody. So we don't get a lot of whodunits. So I think that's important as well. Suspect collections is with the judicial order. Obviously, that's simple enough, or with consent. As I told you, we are not an arrestee state, so we ask for consent, and we have a high percentage of people that give us their DNA. I have my own theories on why they do that, maybe a topic for another day, but we get a lot of DNA from individuals. We triage our evidence, we train, and we do more training. We want to make sure. Pennsylvania, like Pennsylvania, local law enforcement in Nevada is not yet able to search the state database or CODIS of convicted offenders and casework on rapid DNA. Therefore, the cases I'm going to focus in on will show you some results based on rapid DNA application that is available to us. That's crime scene to individual, reference sample to forensic sample. And we have hundreds of cases that we could talk about, but we're not going to because I only have about 12 to 13 minutes. So we're going to hone in on just a couple of cases. I just checked my phone only because one time I did this and I got bounced off and I was talking to nobody. So I just wanted to make sure that Lauren didn't text me that I'm off the air here. So that's what we're going to be talking about, these particular cases. So the first case we're going to talk about is a robbery, multiple vehicle theft investigation in a 6-month period. We suffered, like everybody else, vehicle thefts are way up in this country, an influx of vehicle thefts. And then one particular case, an elderly woman was robbed of her car, carjacking at knife point. We developed a suspect, still doing some old-fashioned police work here. A detective obtained a search warrant for his DNA. His DNA was entered into the rapid instrument and resulted in numerous hits. The result of that led to the arrest and the closure of the robbery and 6 additional stolen vehicles. And if we didn't have the rapid instrument with a database, we probably maybe would have found the guy and he maybe would have confessed to it, but we would have never linked the other stolen vehicles. So I think that's significant. And if I was to talk for an hour and a half to 2 hours, as some of my presentations have gone in depth, you would see case after case after case, burglaries, robberies, thefts, drugs, you name it. We've come across it and are utilizing DNA as an everyday tool. But it's not just about arresting people. Part of our job, a very important part of our job, is making sure that innocent people don't go to jail. This particular case was an elderly woman who lived in a condo community by herself. Seemed like she had her wits about her, very well spoken, no prior police contacts. We've had no issues with her. She reports a sexual assault. She names the individual of the sexual assault. This guy was the boyfriend of another woman that lived in her complex, significantly younger than she was. He was a known sex offender, had been arrested for sexual assault in the past, had no alibi. He was caught on surveillance camera in the area. And we have an eyewitness that named him. Sounds like a pretty good case to me, slam dunk. If there was no such thing as DNA, this guy would still be in jail. So he's arrested. But the detective said something's not right here. This guy, most of these guys will confess. He just proclaimed his innocence. And what we did was he had drank some coffee, allegedly at the victim's house, and we recovered fluid from the victim, and it did not match the suspect. It did not match him. So we withdrew the charges. He actually spent about 2 to 3 days in jail. She then goes on to name 2 other suspects who we excluded through DNA. She names a 4th suspect, and that's when we found out. Her relatives then decided to tell us that she's suffering from severe delusional mental health issues. Now, she had fluids in her, so she had sex with somebody, but we don't know, and we certainly, at this point, we're not going to press rape charges against anybody. I think, if memory serves me correct, she changed her whole story after the 4th guy, and we refused to even interview him. So this is extremely important because that first guy would have went to jail if it wasn't for DNA. Then in July of 2017, be mindful of the timeline here. We just went live March of 17. So July of 17, we get a quadruple homicide. A young man in our town lured 4 boys off the streets. He was selling marijuana to them, legal, illegal, whatever. It is illegal here in Pennsylvania, but no one should lose their life for buying marijuana. He kidnaps these boys. He kills them on his family farm. 3 of the boys are buried in the same area in a grave. They are beaten severely, unrecognizable facially. They are set on fire. And the 4th boy was buried on the farm about a half mile away. So we find DNA in one of the barns on the family farm, which is about 40 minutes from us, about mid part of the county up. and it matches one of the boys that we were able to get DNA off his toothbrush. So now we know we have that body. We go to locate the other 3 bodies in the same area. We identify them through rapid DNA. And then to make a very, very long story short, he does not disclose the location of the 4th body. For some reason, it was buried far enough from that scene. The DA makes a deal. The guy's never getting out of jail again. That they take the death penalty off the table, and we're able to find the 4th body. And then we're able to, through DNA, identify and put faces to the bodies, names to the bodies, I should say. And what's that worth to parents? I want to, hopefully, I'll never know anybody that has to go through that, but it's priceless. And there's another use. Obviously, they've used it in Miami for the tower collapse. People have used this around the world, or certainly around the country, for identification in mass disasters. So here we're using it in a criminal case for identification purposes. Then we, as I told you in 21, we started with a regional database with Philadelphia. So our people, our knowns, are going into this database and hitting to Philadelphia crimes. Let me go back one. I thought I had the crimes up here. I do not, but they're hitting. So our people that are stealing from box stores, like stealing from Target and Walmart, are hitting the sexual assaults in the city of Philadelphia. You're not going to see it today, but I would put my next paycheck on it that in about 3 years from now, you're going to see if we continue on this path and this expands, and Philadelphia does what they're doing and what they should be doing, you're going to see some dramatic decreases in crime if these people are held accountable in the city of Philadelphia, because they won't be on the streets any longer, hopefully, to commit these crimes. So the low-level crimes in the suburbs, they're committing higher crimes or bigger crimes in the big cities. We're talking about sexual assaults, we're talking about armed robberies, we're talking about homicide. And we have, a couple of dozen of these to talk about. Some of our other program statistics, we have probably about 58,000 now profiles in our database, almost half reference, half evidence. We have over 10,000 plus hits, about 1,700. These are a little up now. I update them every couple of weeks. Excuse me. Over 700 rapid leads. 33 cases in Philadelphia. That was of a few months ago. 310 hits, and then 26. This is a true life number. 26 exclusionary and elimination of cases. That is an extremely important number. That's 26 people that have been exonerated or excluded or eliminated. We didn't know what we were going to start in 2010 and then again in 2017 utilizing rapid, but we're hitting property crime, out of the park, but we're also doing a lot of violent crime and narcotics, a lot of drugs with this. Swabbing vials, swabbing baggies, swabbing kilos on the taped area. We're hitting a lot of drugs as well. Some of the results, we saw a 42% reduction in burglary. Our county at the same time saw a 25% reduction in burglary. People said, well, crime's down. Yeah, the national average decrease was about 4.5%. When I was the chief in Ben Salem and now the sheriff of the county, we're showing numbers like 42 and 25%. Those are pretty good numbers. So many times this is an hour and a half presentation with a lot more stories and a lot more crimes. But this is really the condensed version. The upper right-hand corner for the lab folks and the scientists, that's my DNO profile up there. It means nothing to me. It means nothing to the average person. And that's one of the other things that we do. We try to explain to these people that are the naysayers of us utilizing people's DNA. They don't get it. All we know is male and female. That's it. This is not Jerry Springer. We're not, looking for, although you could do that now with Rapid, but we're not looking for who's the father. We're not looking, tell you you're from, Europe and, 85% of your family is this. We're not looking at paternal issues. We're not looking at other, that you're green-eyed or blue-eyed or right-handed or you're predetermined for this issue or that issue. Male or female, and were you at the crime scene, and did you have any part of this crime? That's all I care about. That's all we're interested in. So I'll be on for hopefully to the end if you have questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff Herron. Our final presenter today is Dr. Lisa Smith-Rome. Dr. Smith-Rome has worked at the Washoe County Sheriff's Office for over 18 years, and she has worked as a criminalist processing hundreds of cases for DNA, served as the DNA technical leader, and is currently a supervising criminalist overseeing the biology unit. Over to you, Lisa.
Okay, so let's make sure everyone can see. Hey, can everyone see my presentation?
Ridiculous.
Looks good.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Lauren. So I am really excited to talk to you all today about Northern Nevada's approach to establishing a rapid DNA program. And for those of you who do not know who we are, we provide forensic services to 13 of the 17 counties in Nevada and 1 county in California. So in this picture, anything above the red line is who we provide forensic services to. So we are frequently working with multiple different agencies within each of these counties. So our laboratory already has a rapid hit ID system in use for hit confirmations, reference samples, and rush type arrestee and convicted offender sample processing. The cartridges that are used for these samples are not the ones that are approved for the use on that will be approved for use on casework like samples in the future. We don't frequently use the rapid instrument for the processing of arrestee or convicted offender samples, only because we have a very efficient and streamlined program within the lab, and we can get offender samples into our database in 20 days or less. So after much discussion with multiple different agencies throughout Northern Nevada, it became apparent that there was a very much a desire to establish a rapid DNA program in Northern Nevada. And so the lab decided to go ahead and spearhead that program. So the very first step was, as with all projects, is we needed money. And so in 2023, the lab requested appropriation funds through our county manager's office, requesting money in order to fund this program. At the end of 2023, we heard that we were approved to go ahead and apply for the Invited to Apply Byrne Discretionary Community Projects Grant, or the Byrne Discretionary Grants Program. And we were awarded $996,000 to get us going with this program. So what are we going to use this money for? Well, we are going to purchase 2 rapid hit ID instruments and associated software, and this is going to cost approximately $400,000. We are also going to purchase about 5 years worth of service maintenance contracts for these instruments, and that will cost approximately $185,000. We will also purchase the consumables needed to run samples on the rapid instrument, and we expect that to be around $270,000 for 1,200 samples. So the rapid hit ID systems will be housed in a room at the Regional Public Safety Training Center, and that is a perfect location for us because it's just 5 minutes from the lab and less than 20 minutes for multiple agencies and less than an hour for many more. We already have much of the IT infrastructure to securely transfer data generated from these rapid instruments to our lab, but we are going to have to purchase a server to accommodate all the data, and that's going to be approximately $46,000 to do so. This grant will also fund initial accreditation costs associated with the addition of this room to our lab's accreditation scope, and I don't have the cost for that yet. We have an email out requesting an approximate quote for this. So having an area where we can house multiple rapid instruments has certainly some advantages, especially being so close to the lab. first of all, the lab is going to take care of everything. So when our agencies who are trained to utilize the rapid instrument want to run some samples, they are going to go to this room in this regional training center, and they will have a fully stocked functional lab space. So the proximity to the lab will also allow for any troubleshooting and also the stocking of supplies. And after the grant money ends, the cost for service contracts on these instruments and continued accreditation costs can be shared amongst multiple different agencies. And then the consumables, so that are the cartridges that are needed in order to run the samples, have expiration dates. And after these dates once the expiration date happens, the instrument will not let you use the cartridge anymore. So therefore, by having multiple agencies constantly using the same instruments and the same supplies, then there's a significantly less chance of just waste. So this rapid room at the Regional Training Centre will need to be renovated in order to create a functional lab space accessible to rapid trained individuals from our law enforcement agencies who wish to participate. Grant funds then, therefore, because really right now it's a room and it has a table and I think it has a sink. So we're going to need to replace the carpet with linoleum. We're going to purchase chemical resistant workbenches with storage and a sink. We'll purchase a refrigerator and also a temperature monitoring probe for the refrigerator that can then be added on to the temperature monitoring system that we use here in the lab. The chemicals, the cartridges, are going to be stored in a refrigerator. So we need to be notified if the refrigerator decides to stop working so that we can move all of these consumables into a functioning refrigerator so that we don't actually lose all of the consumables that are in the fridge. And we are notified even after hours if any of our refrigerators or freezers end up stop functioning while we are not at work. So we'll also be purchasing supplies needed to prevent sample contamination and to allow for the repackaging of evidence. So things like masks, gloves, disposable lab coats, scalpels, butcher paper, cleaning supplies, you name it, they'll all be in this space. We're also going to purchase 2 computers, monitors, accessories, and a printer, and that's going to allow our rapid users to enter CODIS eligibility case-specific information into our lab information management system so that the criminalists who are reviewing these samples for entry into CODIS can easily confirm that the samples are suitable. We are also going to purchase backup uninterrupted power supplies for the rapid instruments and computers. So now we'll have one which we currently have in our lab and 2 at the Regional Training Centre that's easily accessible by multiple agencies throughout this community. However, as you can see, Nevada is a pretty big state, and so driving from Reno to Elko or Reno to Ely will take 4 and 5 hours. So the good news is Elko also received grant funding in order to purchase a rapid instrument at their sheriff's office. So our lab is going to validate this instrument using the Intel Plus cartridges that are expected to be approved in 2025 for use on specific casework evidence for entry into CODIS. The validation will occur in our lab with an additional performance check performed once it is moved to its home in Elko. We will also assist Elko with ensuring the rapid room meets the accreditation requirements that will fall under our lab's accreditation umbrella. And we will provide training to the rapid users at that site. So our lab will provide select personnel from all participating agencies the needed training to determine CODIS eligibility and also appropriate samples for testing, to sample evidence to prevent contamination, to utilize the rapid HIT ID instrument, and to document any case-specific information needed for CODIS eligibility in the lab information management system. We'll also train these users on the applicable accreditation standards. So we will provide all the standard operating procedures to all the sites, and we will ensure that all accreditation requirements to include the Federal Quality Assurance Standards for forensic laboratories are met. And we will coordinate proficiency testing and audits for all of our agencies. So how will it work? Well, once the Rapid Hit ID system, Intel cartridge system, is approved for eligible casework sample entry into CODIS, we envision the following. A law enforcement agency identifies evidence that would be suitable for processing on the Rapid instrument. This evidence is collected using the A and B swab approach. A Rapid user from the law enforcement agency will run the B swab on the Rapid instrument for DNA profile searching in CODIS. And as you learned, this takes approximately 90 minutes. The Rapid user from the law enforcement agency will also enter CODIS eligibility information into the lab information management system. Then the lab Rapid team will be notified that a profile is ready for review to confirm CODIS eligibility and upload into CODIS. Once approved, the profile will be immediately searched at the state level and later that day at the national level. And the agency will be promptly notified of the results of the search. The agency and the lab will work closely together to determine any additional testing that is needed for the case. So what about CODIS ineligible samples? Well, if a DNA profile is generated by the Rapid instrument that is not suitable for CODIS entry, and that could be because it maybe doesn't have the appropriate quality, and a suspect reference sample is available, then the suspect reference sample can also be run on the Rapid for comparison by lab staff with the generation of associated statistics. So frequently law enforcement, they get hit reports. And this could be from DNA profiles generated on the Rapid or from DNA profiles generated within the lab. Law enforcement agency will get a report requesting a reference sample. And the cool thing now is with a Rapid instrument, then this reference sample can be run on the Rapid instrument, and the lab can then use the profiles for comparisons to the DNA profiles generated in the case. And then a suspect reference sample is, and this frequently happens, is obtained after the evidence is processed and unknown DNA profiles are generated. Well, law enforcement can run the reference samples on the Rapid, and these profiles can be used by the lab for comparison with statistical generation. So final thoughts are, this is a very brief overview of what it's going to entail in order to establish a successful Rapid DNA program. It's going to require a significant amount of teamwork between the forensic lab and our participating law enforcement agencies. We'll also be communicating with the district attorney's offices that we work with. And I think together, though, we can make for a very successful program. There's certainly going to be hurdles to overcome, but this program has an enormous potential to positively impact criminal investigations. And we are very excited to be part of it. So here is my contact information. If you have any questions, any follow-up questions after the presentation, don't hesitate to call me, email me. And for any of our agencies that are on this call, we will certainly be in lots of communication over the next year. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next presenter today is Doug Harris, who currently serves as the FBI Rapid DNA Implementation Advisor. Before leading the Rapid DNA efforts for the FBI laboratory, Doug served as the FBI's custodian for National DNA Index Systems and served as the liaison to all CODIS programs throughout the country. Doug will give us an update on the FBI's path for forensic DNA use in CODIS. Over to you, Doug. Thank you, Doug, and thank you to all of our presenters today. We now have a little bit of time for questions. We have one here for Sheriff Herron. How did you get the buy-in for your program? How did you sell it to your elected officials, your department, and the public?
I haven't told them yet. No, I'm just kidding. That was a joke, Lauren. Uh, there we go. I need a smile every now and then here. You know, we started we didn't keep it a secret. We sat down. The first thing I did was sit down with my mayor at the time as an elected official in Bucks County. I guess we could do that one first. It's easy. I don't need the blessing of anybody here, but we actually, it was so successful in Bensalem that when I went to the sheriff of the county, I knew I wanted to expand this program and get more rapid machines. So actually, I didn't talk about it in the presentation, but we just procured 2 more instruments, one in my office and one in the northern part of the county. As if you remember, I told you the county is very long. So the 90 minutes now is going to be a lot quicker for people in the north end of the county. They don't have to drive all the way down to the southern part. But we just really shared all the information. We were already successful with local databasing. And we explained about Rapid and really what it meant to us and what it meant to the people of our county and the people of our community, that getting criminals off the street immediately or within 90 minutes, which is pretty darn immediate for government, it was an easy buy-in to my elected officials. Then we had some groups that thought we were invading people's privacy. And that's what I had said during the presentation. All we're looking at is male and female. We're only looking at things that are crime related. So people were still a little skeptical. There's probably still some skeptics out there, but it's DNA. It's scientific. After the George Floyd incident, and we're just going back now, May of 2020 or 2021, I forget. I think 2020. It was, they want police officers to have less hands-on with individuals. Well, this is science doing the work. This is science, not police knocking on doors, asking people, doing interviews. So this is even less hands-on capabilities needed for law enforcement, that the science is doing the work and actually just pointing us to the individual that committed the crime. So, this solves so many different issues that law enforcement was facing recently and in the past. As for the cops, once they first saw the benefits in the first couple of hits and how easy it was, that science was actually making the arrest for them, they bought in very quickly. It wasn't hard to show them that this was a useful tool. And the arrests and the clearances and the crime drops, it just sold itself. But it's a great question, and it just keeps selling itself. And as we keep expanding here in Bucks County and then our partners in Philadelphia, Chester, Montgomery, this is a win-win for everybody. I hope I answered the question, whoever asked it.
Thank you, Sheriff Herron. This one is for Lisa Smith-Rome. What has to happen for the WashU program to expand its regional program to a statewide program?
Hi, yes. So I think the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Forensic Science Division, they are certainly very aware of the rapid program of the rapid instruments. And so I would encourage any agencies that submit evidence to their lab is to just pick up the phone and call them, and so that you can start discussing whether the rapid program in Southern Nevada is warranted and would be a very good tool to have in the toolbox.
Thank you, Lisa. This one's for Doug. What key recommendations does the FBI provide to agencies or labs to ensure a smooth rollout of rapid DNA programs?
That's a really good question. We're going to have a ton of guidance and documents kind of drop as soon as we have the standards approved. And really, I'm hoping next February we're able to put all of that information out there. It'll all be on our website, but the standards are just one piece. there's a guidance document that SWGDAM publishes that really describes how to meet each standard. That document is undergoing SWGDAM review right now, and we're hoping that that gets approved by SWGDAM in January, so they can be published at the same time, because that document is already 25 pages long just for the rapid standards. And so it's really important. I think that is really going to help folks, and there'll be more information coming too that we'll be able to publish on the website that will really put that in place. So if you can just hang tight a little bit longer, we will have all those recommendations out there for you. We're really hoping in February of next year.
Thanks, Doug. Looks like we have another one for you. It says, is the FBI looking for NDIS Labs to submit data for approval of the Intel Plus cartridge?
We don't have anyone yet that has done that, but yes, you know, the person to reach out to would be the NDIS custodian for that submission process. I will work very closely with her. And so ndis@fbi.gov, if you want to email her, if there's a lab that's interested, definitely can walk through the process. There's a lot of information about what is going to be needed in that guide to all things rapid for that approval. So take a look at that. But those discussions surely can start.
Thanks, Doug. This one is for Lisa Hurst. How can agencies best position themselves to be successful when applying for funding or grants for rapid DNA technology?
Well, I would strongly recommend beginning those conversations internally, all the way up your, command staff. And as you're discussing with command staff and the value of bringing rapid DNA into your arsenal of tools, again, as I think we've repeated over and over, make sure you're also communicating with that crime laboratory that you're going to be working with on the back end as well, so that everyone's on the same page. If you're looking at the federal earmark process, right now would be a good time to begin talking to people to get some letters of support, which are a mandatory piece of this process. If anyone's interested in that, I'd be happy to have a separate conversation with you to kind of go into the details of what that process looks like. But definitely, if you're just looking at downstream, middle of next year, being ready for that CODIS eligibility again, be talking in-house, be talking to your local budget writers, policy advisors, and be talking to that crime laboratory for your local or state jurisdiction.
Thank you, Lisa. This one's for Rob, but maybe Doug, you could answer this. We have been told not to run sexual assault kits on rapid DNA due to mixtures. Will rapid DNA become more reliable for sexual assault kits and other mixtures in the future?
That's a great question. I think, these enhancements, we did a multi-lab study that's being published, and there's some mixture data in there. Labs are going to have to look at that mixture data to see, we need more testing done, honestly, there. But the key too is, if you're going to do a sexual assault kit, it requires pre-processing. It's not just placing it into the rapid instrument. So you have to do a differential extraction outside. That is a laboratory process, right? That is not necessarily something that's easily done elsewhere. In the QAS standards that are coming out, it does require laboratory trained technicians to do any type of that pre-processing. It takes extra reagents that need QC checks. It's not just the cartridge. There's extra equipment. There's a lot of extra things. So this may be something that is enhanced in the future, and I know FIU is actually working on some studies for that, but we'll just have to wait and see. It might be a couple of years before we see anything on that.
Thanks, Doug. And that wraps up our webinar for today. Thank you again to all of our presenters and everyone who joined us today. We really hope that this information is helpful as you consider the issues related to advancing rapid DNA in your jurisdiction. And please feel free to reach out to GTH DNA or any of the presenters if you have any questions. We also encourage you to visit www.gorapiddna.com, where you can find additional rapid DNA policy and program information and updates, and I will leave the link in the chat. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.